Hello, my friends. Welcome to this transmission. This is a question that came through, or a response to a question that's come through, not just on a comment. Someone asked a very specific question about certain teachers that I've worked with, or just like certain law of attraction teachers out there, like Abraham Hicks, Neville Goddard kind of feel. Even Bashar can fall into this category. If you guys are familiar with that, great. If you're not, then whatever. There's a ton of people within the past, 100 years, especially that really do talk about the necessity of understanding the mind and how the mind creates the world, right? Or your world. And there's a lot of different levels and layers to these things, so I am going to just do my best to bring through what feels the most relevant for those beings that will be tuning into this transmission in particular. So thank you to the individual who inspired this today's transmission. This is aligning to your soul's plan with ease. And we're going to be discussing a little bit about, law of attraction teachings, just like people that are very immersed in the world of metaphysics. And then I'm going to speak on the yogic path and what has led me to the yogic path and where those diverge and where there is a pretty solid crossover. So, my intention is never to make anyone's reality to, disconfirm or devalidate someone's reality and what they're guided to do within an incarnation. I have no fucking idea what you guys are here for. I know what's relevant for me and what's relevant for me to explore, and that's taken some trial and error, right? And so, that's another great segue into just the fact and the point of like, you can't get it wrong, you guys. There's nothing you can do to get it wrong. But there are going to be timelines you can most certainly merge with that feel more authentic and just feel more easeful, even in the midst of you deconstructing the limited ego self that builds protection mechanisms around itself in order to, protect itself from past traumas, or to, even sometimes the ego can try to rewrite our childhood script in distorted ways that we might not always be aware of. And so these are all aspects that we're going to dive into today. So first of all, again, I don't know what's right for you guys. When I was really heavily practicing metaphysics and law of attraction teachings, what I didn't recognize, and this is something that I have with hindsight, that I understand with hindsight, was the reason why I felt deeply guided to go a different way is because I had quite a few nervous system disturbances when I was younger. And so you guys might be like, how the fuck does this apply? Well, if you want to go even deeper into understanding trauma, the effects of trauma on the subtle body, I've made a video about that. I've also made a video about paradigm leaps and taking paradigm jumps and understanding the subtle body, understanding the nervous system in terms of creating and law of attractioning, or just like creating the reality that you want, right? At least from the level that I tend to feel that people that are really immersed in that side of metaphysics tend to come from. And so, there was a point where there was a period, I should say, where there was a lot of frustration because I didn't recognize, or I didn't realize how to heal that nervous system trauma, and I didn't understand what it meant. I didn't realize that I was a house divided against myself. So, when you first go through your initial awakenings, you can have all of these incredible downloads and these insights, and yes, I'm God, I'm divinity incarnate. You can have that conceptually. You can be really tuned in. Your crown can be open. And this is something that I've noticed with beings that, have gone through a significant amount of trauma. Your crown is wide open. You don't want to be in your body, though. And so that's the thing. It's like you have to be present in your body, at least in my most humble of opinions. Like if you are practicing these principles and you are visualizing like crazy, what's really great about that is that you are preparing your vibrational field, right? Visualization, in my most humble of opinions, it's not necessarily I'm creating this. It's like, no, you're tuning into the energy and what a next more expanded paradigm is going to look like for you and feel like for you. You're tuning into your future self who is giving you this feedback. And it's like, okay, how do I prepare my body? How do I prepare my system to be able to sustain that paradigm? Right. And so understanding how the nervous system and the subtle body works is really important because, at least this is something that I've learned over the span of the past 5 years, especially, is that, If there were a lot of nervous system disruptions and a lot of like fear and a lot of insecurity and instability, that is most certainly going to have an effect on you feeling like you are in control of your reality. Because again, you can be so tuned in, you can have such incredible glimpses of what your life is going to look like and what it's supposed to look like in your highest timeline. But then there can be such a disconnect and such a deep frustration when that's not your actual experience. When you think you're God, but your experience is not that. When your experience is like very scared and very limited, right? And so at some point, I needed to address the trauma. And that was actually a word that I never associated, a label I never associated with myself. And it's not like to this day I'm like attaching to my trauma, but there came to a point where I needed to acknowledge it as a very serious and as a very valid part of my experience and what was filtering my experience and flavoring my experience, right? And so Ram Dass has this beautiful quote of, you get to a point on your spiritual journey where you're not just worried about getting high, right? You want to be free. And so even though I was making great waves and I had like visualized really incredible scenarios for myself, it was built upon sand because it was built, solely from the mind, and I didn't fully believe it in my body. And so that's where the yogic path, where I started, exploring more of the yogic path and meditation and the science behind meditation, and just like what my guides were telling me was happening during meditation, the deep rewiring in meditation, and how that is here to create a more unified personality versus a more scattered personality. So, these are just the different levels. So if you are someone that comes in, you didn't have a whole lot of nervous system disruptions, and you might find, law of attraction very easy. You might find thinking it and it happening really easy for you, and that's great, right? Also, something that I'm feeling guided to touch on too is that we're all going to come in with different levels of how much I'm here to explore for myself and how much I am here to help the planet out of its darkness, right? This is like a co-op. This is not a co-op. This is like Black Ops. My vegan ass. This is like Black Ops, right? So it's like you're going undercover, right? It's like we take on these bodies, especially if you don't resonate with Earth being your native planet and you're more of like a wanderer soul. It's like we take on these, the DNA of humanity, right? In order to help rewire the system from the inside out. How do you really change a system? It's by knowing its inner workings. And so I was also something that my guides really were working with me to understand for quite a while too, because there was so much frustration, right? They were working to help me understand that what you've taken on, a lot of the things that you've taken on is not your shit. This is not your karma. This is not stuff that you necessarily needed for your soul's expansion. Am I going to expand? Is my soul, my higher self learning? Absolutely. But these weren't necessarily lessons. A lot of that darkness and a lot of what I took on early in incarnation was more so I could adopt and take on the codes of humanity and to help transmute it through my vessel, right? Because then we create etheric pathways. So what you do in your spare time, how you work yourself out of a pit of despair is going to affect the rest of, other beings around you, right? So these are all layers that I had to come to terms with when it felt like the level I was trying to create from and why I was trying to create was from a very distorted place, right? And so what I love about teachings from Abraham and teachings from like Bashar is they really accentuate the importance of maintaining vibrational sovereignty. And I deeply believe that is one of the most powerful teachings. And on the yogic path, what we begin to understand through Buddha, beautiful beings like Buddha and Lao Tzu, and even, Jesus talked about this, Yeshua, whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what to call it. But just like these ascended masters, right? We tend to see, if you remove the religion from it, there's a lot of spiritual texts that actually say very similar things. I'm guided to, without hopefully turning off my lights, because the lights are really touchy. Like books like this are incredible, the parallel sayings. So you can really see how they've all really been saying the same thing, just from different, this is my little puja table. So I have books that help me tune in right next to my meditation station. But what these wise beings can continue to tell us, like, place your treasures up where moth and dust do not corrupt. Search ye first the kingdom of God, and then all else shall be added unto you. right? Unless ye be like little children, you cannot enter the kingdom. Buddha had the Four Noble Truths talking about suffering. What is suffering? Suffering is when your model of the way reality should be and how your reality actually is do not align. That's what causes suffering. And so I realized that my model of reality at a certain point did not match what was actually happening, because there was deep rewiring that was happening in my system, and it wasn't happening on Marissa's timeline. Right? So often I feel like we can get into these teachings and it's like we have our initial awakenings and like we want our paradigm done tomorrow. We wanted it here before we even knew that we wanted it, right? And so there's a lot of levels, a lot of layers to this. Like, you were ready, right? But it was also a pull to God, towards God, from God, source, creator, whatever you want to call it. And so where I feel like these things can lead us astray and really take us out of our, vibrational sovereignty is when we need that external confirmation before, right? We can't feel free until we aren't successful, until we aren't A, B, and C, until, right? And all of these masters, what they'll continue to tell you is that it's just here and now. And so I feel like you can be very empowered. You can use those teachings to really empower yourself when you're not trying to flee from this present moment. Because it's this weird catch-22 that I've learned over the years that, the main thing about law of attraction is about your vibration and, maintaining that high vibe, right? Almost wish there were different words associated with that. I almost wish it could be more like being in harmony with the way things are, right? The most important part of law of attraction is being in harmony, which includes that some days you're going to feel fucking depressed. It's part of the human experience. Some days you're going to feel like not talking to anyone. Some days you're going to be like, I don't want to be here anymore. Some days you're going to feel on top of your game. Some days you're going to be like, I wish this life could go on forever. Some days you're like, I don't have enough time to do all the things that I want to do. But it's like allowing whatever feels most harmonious and whatever is most natural in that moment. You're not attaching your identity to it. That's where the yogic path comes into play. You're not attaching your sense of self to what is or what is not happening. And because so, those things are going to move through you very quickly. Unless ye be like little children. If you have kids are the gateway into God, I swear. Like, they are the direct path to self-realization. You see how kids, they don't attach their sense of identity to like a tantrum. It's just there's this a wellspring of energy coming through. They don't get something that they think that they want, so suffering happens. They let that suffering move through and they're over it almost instantaneously unless someone comes in to perpetuate it, right? They don't hold grudges. They just let it move through, right? And they're just so in the moment, they're so present. And so one thing that I tended to notice, at least for my own path, because I can only speak for myself, is that I was not honoring who I was in this moment. And I was feeling like I needed to be a more evolved person in order to be worthy, right? There was a strong unworthiness cord, which is also another video I've made, but a strong unworthiness cord that in the first 15 years of my life, I tried to numb. Not 15, early 20s, I was still numbing, right? Right until the point I found out I was pregnant, right? And even then it had been tapering off because I found Eckhart Tolle and I had really Wayne Dyer, right? So I had been tapering, but those between the time we have our first awakenings and when we do gain full sovereignty or to the point where the karmic scales tip and it really does feel like we are a sovereign being for the most part. It's like there's that, there's going to be that karmic runoff. Karmic tendencies, karmic patterns, of course, that is relevant to your blueprint and everything that was relevant for you to take on in this incarnation. However, that momentum is a lot stronger in the beginning. So I was not honoring the fact that I had a very traumatic past and I had tried to run away from it from numbing. And I don't want to say that it was all traumatic, but there was enough good for me to not lose hope in life, but there was enough darkness for me to be like, what the fuck is happening here? And what is wrong with me? And being bullied, right? Just for being your pure self, being picked on and rejected and sometimes in some cases physically bullied, most cases mentally, emotionally, psychologically bullied, right? And so there's all these different things that we have to unwire, right? Or that I needed to unwire. And when I was practicing visualization techniques, yes, I could put myself into new realities, but because that process hadn't naturally unfolded, because I feel like, spirit's like, you have free will. You can do what the fuck ever you want. You can make a really good life living from the cerebral and just trying to visualize and really doing your best to just like get in that energy. Yeah, it doesn't have to be so hard. And that's why this video is about aligning with your soul's plan with ease, right? Because yeah, there were great things and very necessary things along my path where I needed to see how powerful I was, where I needed to see A, B, and C, where I did need a certain extent of validation to move forward. I feel like I definitely needed that in those times where I was a fitness instructor, and all the following and, you know, the recognition and everything. That was incredible. In terms of seeing that I actually do have something to work with. So the beginning of my life was running away, right? We're getting back to that point, numbing the unworthiness. And then up to like 22 into now, and it's tapered off the past few years again, because I've been meditating a lot. I've been spending a lot more time in contemplation, right? And so that rewiring is happening on a very subconscious, on a very subtle level. So when it was like 22 on, it was then I was now trying to prove. I wasn't running away or numbing it, but I was trying to prove that I was worthy, which is still coming from the same cord of unworthiness, right? And so, you know, everyone's going to learn what they need to on their own time, right? The yogic path has definitely, through meditation, contemplation, and immersing myself less in teachings about what do I want to create and more about let God in and see what happens, right? Which feels a lot more exciting to me. That might not be the case for other people, for other people. And I'm not knocking that, right? Whatever floats your boat. However, for me, it's been very, very freeing. It's important for me to feel free, right? And two, I noticed with the teachings of like, and just wanting to prove myself, because the time I correlate law of attraction within the time period where I was really trying to prove something about myself. And I was really trying to become somebody important. Right? So those periods go together. So that's kind of, I feel like, why I can have almost like a cold shoulder to those teachings. Because when I started fully accepting myself in all that I was, my misperceptions, my insecurities, right? The more that I started just like being perfectly okay with everything that was occurring in this moment, the more confident I became, the more bold I became, the more free I started to feel. And that's what was more important to me, because I attracted realities that were great. I had family members who like really don't get me. You know, I'm sure a lot of you guys understand what that's like. They really don't get my expression. They don't get me, right? And I even had some of them reaching out when I was getting success on a very more of a global level, and in a realm where their minds could associate Marissa as successful because it was something external. It was something that society has agreed upon as being successful. And so I had people reaching out and congratulating out and all of those things, but there was something off about it. I was filtering my expression. I still didn't feel safe within myself. I didn't feel safe in my body. So like I felt like I was in someone else's skin that didn't belong to me. And that is so uncomfortable. And so, you know, this past like year and a half now that I've really dove deeper into yogic teachings and meditation and aligning myself with that path, right? It's like I have been able to see where I was trying to create things out of unworthiness or from still trying to rewrite a distorted childhood narrative, you know? And so what I love about Abraham is I'm pretty sure, I don't tune into the teachings very much, but I'm pretty sure they talk about, or like ever, since like, you know, the past like quite a long time, right? Years. I believe Abraham talks about meditation. And so that's great. Right? I would make that the most important thing above anything else. And when you feel, Joel Goldsmith talks about a click. So when I'm in meditation in the mornings, like I really love and I look forward to when I feel a cosmic click. It just feels like something aligns, and it's almost like I sigh too and I can relax. And that's my indication that I am aligning with what is true. And what is truth, right? What I believe the true path of spirituality is being able to recognize the subtle nature more, being able to recognize that which is unchanging, right? And so often I feel like, you know, which is great in law of attraction when it's about vibrational sovereignty, but then where I start to feel like it misses the mark of what yogic teachings, this is where it diverges. I don't necessarily say it's bad or wrong, but this is where it doesn't jive with me and my path. And yogic philosophy is when you need it to be a certain person. You need it to be a certain job. You need it to be A, B, C, and D, because then I feel like you're setting yourself up for suffering, but suffering is grace. Ram Dass says all the time, or he would say, says all the time. Well, we have a very strong psychic connection, right? So he does say all the time, and reminds me all the time, suffering is grace. Why is suffering grace? Suffering shows you where you are still attached. Suffering shows you where you need something to be a certain way, where you have certain desires that you need in order to confirm something about yourself, or where you have certain aversions, things that you stay away from because it's going to reveal to you where your house is quite literally built upon sand. They're part of the two ends of the same spectrum, two sides of the same coin, right? And so for me, it became, because there was so much suffering in the beginning of my incarnation, and even within the paradigms and the realities where I should have been the most happiest, I was stressed. I was not happy. I felt even more insecure. And it's weird because there was definitely thresholds, because I was, or not thresholds, but there were moments where, I felt really good and I felt very empowered. I was still working on unifying my personality, right? And not tiptoeing around who I am, because I learned a lot. Like, my throat had closed down quite a bit in early incarnation. And so I tiptoed quite a bit around who I was, So we're always going to call in what it is we need, right? Let's just understand that first and foremost. You're always going to draw into your experience what it is you need to actually set you free. And so that includes the suffering, right? That includes, the things that you do want, because then you see how fucking obsessed you get and insane you become when you do get a reflection of a partner that is everything that you've been waiting for, right? And then you do see where you are, still believing that something can take away your peace, or that someone has any type of authority to remove your peace, right, from you. And so the path becomes very, very, very subtle in a way that I feel like, if you are going to follow any teacher, like if you're going to follow teachings like Neville Goddard and Abraham, and like I even have like Catherine Ponder and like Florence Scovel Shinn, I've definitely tuned into their work, and I'm not knocking it. Again, sometimes I'll probably come back to it at some point. It's just what I love. I was recently guided to follow the Bashar page on Facebook, and if you are going to work with law of attraction and like very metaphysical teachings like that, manifestation teachings, I highly recommend also tuning into Bashar, because I've noticed very yogic chords interwoven in Bashar's teachings too, which I feel like is a really great buffer and really great like center ground. So you're not getting too lost in like, you need your life to look a certain way and you're waiting to confirm your success when, right? And it's really about now. I wanted to experience now. I was tired of waiting for when I was good enough for someone, when I was good enough for someone else, or when I was even good enough for like my own distorted self. Like, I wanted freedom now. And so again, something that I've learned over the years is like, what I love about yogic philosophy too is because it really brings you back to honoring your true nature, honoring your individual soul's plan, right? And discarding how it looks, discarding what any suggestion outside is trying to suggest, right? Judge not after appearances. That's one of the reasons why that's like a very well-known quote in the Bible. And again, coming back to yogic teachings in general, like not taking your bait, not taking anything externally to mean anything negative is happening, because ultimately you do see how it's all trying to usher you into your freedom. It's all showing you where you're still. I love how Jay Shetty puts it. That almost took a turn, but I love how Jay Shetty puts it, because he says, it's not about detachment. True detachment is not about going into the forest, right? Going into a mountaintop, a cave, and meditating your entire life. Like, that's not true detachment, right? Sure, you can learn detachment principles, and it's very important to have those periods where you're really taking time to get to know yourself and your field and your complexities, your vibrational complexities, right? And the paradigms you're working with. However, true detachment is when you can be face to face with your deepest desire. Could be staring right at you with their man bun and their blonde hair and their blue eyes, whatever, tattoos, whatever is your cup of tea, right? Your deepest desires can be staring at you. And then also your greatest fears can be knocking at your door, and you meet them with the same sense of neutrality. Let's just take a moment. Your deepest desires, you're meeting that with the same sense of like, as you would meet your deepest fears, right? And fears are very like they seem very real. Those mirages, those illusions seem very real. And so it's interesting because those are different ends of the spectrum, but that's still in the wheel of samsara. It's still in the wheel, attaching yourself to the wheel of cause and effect, right? I feel this way because this happened. And so what I feel like the most powerful teachings you're going to come across, and really to drive home the point about aligning with your soul's plan with ease, it's really about extricating your sense of identity from anything in form, which includes thoughts about yourself, right? Thoughts about where you're going, why you're going there, who you've been, because that leaves no space for grace. And I love teachers like Kyle Cease is incredible because I love how he uses real-time examples of like his mind can conceptualize really incredible realities and really logical and like can allow prosperity. But the people that he works with, like his team and him, put meditation above anything else before they make any decision. And because so, even though it feels so unnatural sometimes to go down a route of a thought that they receive through meditation and they do it, it's like no comparison. It's a different ballpark altogether between the levels of prosperity here and the levels of prosperity here. And it's not just talking about financial. It's talking about the amount of lives he's able to touch, which numbers is not a thing, right? Spirit just doesn't care about numbers, right? But this is just to really drive home the point of, generally, even when we're tuning into like law of attraction, it's still within a box. We still created limits on what we feel and what we deeply believe is possible for us. And so, if anything, it's like, do your best to just remain joyful. Do your best to have a more positive narrative with whatever you're experiencing. Even if it's like, okay, I don't feel on my game. Okay, what the fuck ever. That doesn't mean anything. If you continue to remind yourself that nothing that's happening means anything, it truly doesn't. It is, everything that you see playing out is absolutely inherently meaningless. It is not infused with any meaning. That's what it means to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It doesn't mean that there's good and evil. It just means that now that your mind can start to operate in understanding duality, now you start to think that there is a thing of good and evil. There's a thing of wanted, unwanted, desire, undesirable. Whereas if you didn't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, things would just be as they were, and you would just be in harmony with the way things are. And so I feel like it would be much more empowering in those law of attraction communities to, if you guys are really practicing and really trying to align with your soul's plan with ease, do your best to be at ease, right? And not make anything about where you are now mean anything bad. That's where you're going to tap into peace, man. Like if I could tell you the times where I'm just blissed out. I'm at the park with Maya, she's playing, and I'm just blissed out of my mind. No psychedelics. Sometimes, but this past year has been very sparse in between. And when I do, have like mushrooms or something, it's like microdosing, right? But no additives, just like me. And just because there's been an immense amount of clearing, it's like in meditation, you clear the blockages. This is what the yogic path is about. It's clearing obstructions between the limited mind and the divine mind. And the more that you allow access to the divine mind, the more that you have access, the more that you feel the divine mind running through you and operating through your affairs, the more it doesn't fucking matter what you're doing. Like you can have dance parties. You can be having like orgasmic energy running through your system and you're just cleaning the fucking dishes. Right? And then another powerful thing that my guides have taught me is like when you do have a romantic interest, when you do have someone that has sparked or something is happening externally that makes you really excited, they're showing me use that to fulfill your Dharma. Use that energy to not want to attach to that thing. And like, how do I hold on to this thing? How do I hold on to this energy? How do I hold on to this person? How do I make this everlasting? But channel it towards your Dharma, channel it towards your purpose. That's a lot of creative energy that has become activated. And what I've noticed even more, and this seems so counterintuitive, because when you have that Kundalini energy running through your system very powerfully, you want to go out, you want to create, even if you're just fucking driving around to drive around, like you want to go do something. Take that energy to your meditation cushion, you guys. Because there's a significant reason why that there's been whole sects of yoga, SECTS, sects of yoga that have been designed to harness that Kundalini energy to send it up the spine to clear obstructions between, again, the limited self and the divine mind. There's a reason for that. So if you have all of this potent energy that's being triggered from the outside, rather than making it mean that, oh, I'm getting what I want, take it to the fucking meditation cushion and continue to release. Continue to release any idea of how things should be or what they should be or why they should be. Because the more that I go on along my path, the more that I deepen, the more that I peel back the layers of the onions, right? It's a journey inward, ever and deeper and deeper. The deeper you get in, the more you meet truth. The less your mind, your rational mind, is going to know where the fuck things are going and why they're going there. And it forces you. It forces you. It invites you. Is a kinder word. But for some of us, it feels like a force, right? If we really want to enjoy it, it feels like, okay, I have no fucking choice. I have no choice but to release all of my ideas in every moment as much as I can in regards to who I am, who I've been, where I'm going, why I'm going there. And I'm just here. Peace is in the present. The kingdom is in the present, right? Eckhart Tolle talks about, presence a lot. And I love that. He's a great gateway into understanding these yogic philosophies and principles especially if you're coming from more of like metaphysical law of attraction teachings and you're like, something feels off. Eckhart Tolle, Bashar are great gateways into more of the yogic path. And so I definitely feel like you can honor both of these things. But again, it's like there's a lot of different layers and levels to these things. And so sometimes we can feel like unfair things are happening, but the likelihood that we are to see and to kind of come at our life from that angle is when we're just seeing through the lens of the ego personality. It's the ego, it's the limited self that's like, this isn't how it should be. Or it should be A, B, C, and D. That's the limited self. That's the ego. However, when you're seeing more through the lens of the soul, you're like, this is all fucking perfect. And you can have your entire world crumbling down around you and you are excited and you're blissed out because the more that you open to the divine mind, the more that you truly feel. It's not just a thought, but you deeply believe, oh my God, this just goes on. Like, how incredible. Like, I don't need to fucking achieve whatever I think I need to achieve in this life. I have so many lifetimes. And who am I from this small level to think that I know how it's supposed to be in this lifetime? Like the more that you deepen into source, the more that you open yourself and you continue to release ideas and thoughts and the insanity of fucking humanity, the more that you do that, the more that you do become completely okay with exactly where you're at. Regardless if a version of you 5 years ago would think that you're backtracking, would think that, okay, you have to move back in with your parents or you have to go it doesn't matter how it looks. That's what I love about certain very empowered teachings, regardless if you're yogic or, more law of attraction, metaphysical. The most powerful teachings will reiterate and remind you that don't take the bait of what it looks like. Continue to tune into like what is going to allow me to access the most amount of peace. Because from peace, I think it's Florence Scovel Shinn that uses it, or maybe it's, what's her name? Catherine Ponder, that talk about never missing a trick, right? What does that mean? Never miss a trick. It's like, because you are so present and you're at a place of peace, you're not resisting what is, because you have a projection of, I'm not here yet, or, it doesn't look like this, or this person's doing better, or this person is more aligned, or this person, comparison, whatever is happening. When you're truly present and you're in that state of peace, you're not going to miss divine synchronicity, right? You're going to be aware enough of like, something is sticking out to you in a certain way, or like you keep seeing a number and then that number is attached to a certain building. So you're present enough. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go explore it's in this building. Small things like that, where you're actually going to collapse your timeline a lot sooner because you are present, because you're not rushing somewhere. Because in presence and peace and in stillness, it's like you're able to recognize the subtleties and like you're going to be drawn down different paths, different avenues, different routes that are going to take you somewhere sooner. But at that point, you don't fucking care if you get there or not because you're so happy, you're so content. When we say bliss in the yogic communities too, bliss isn't this like, this ecstatic thing that the Western minds have created it to be. Bliss is very subtle. It's a very subtle contentment and peace and knowing like it's that peace that surpasses all understanding because it doesn't have to look anyway. And you've detached, and people might look at you crazy, but it's because you are operating from a different level. You are operating within different realms, where it's not just about this one realm. This realm is still relevant. We still feed our kids. We still, go to the bathroom, shower, shit, shave, whatever we got to do. But it's like the place we're doing it from is a lot different. And so I feel like that's where a good merging can happen of these two paths of like vibrational sovereignty, not waiting to have your external reality, not taking any suggestion of anything, knowing it's all meant to, whether it's negative or positive. I know Bashar even talks about like, know that the second you start to tune into a more positive reality, your negative thoughts and old, just like karmic propensities that want to keep you tethered, they will come up. And I love that. So it's not like, oh, I'm thinking good thoughts and to assume that something is going wrong or you're doing something wrong because something negative is coming up in your field. That's a good thing. It's all here to show you. When you understand suffering is here to show you where you're still attached. And when you get in the yogic path, the more that you go down the yogic path, the more that you see how even your desires are suffering. There's suffering built into even your greatest desires, because then you're afraid of losing them. My Kundalini yoga teacher said the other day, it like creates a vacuum. The more you start to get money, the more that the mind is like, it's like a vacuum. It's always hungry, right? The money is never going to be enough. The sex is never going to be enough. Getting the partners you want is never going to be enough. As long as you're coming from that level of being a hungry ghost versus someone empowered within themselves. That's not worried about what's happening out here, and that is truly a sovereign, untethered soul. And so you can go where you're called, and then that you're much more likely to meet the people you're supposed to meet. You're going to have the opportunities fall into your hands, fall into your laps. Like the most powerful things that have happened in my life were they literally, I did not have to go out and get it, but when it showed up, you better fucking believe I gave it my all. But because of that, because you're operating and you can see these divine appointments and you're not missing a trick, you're taking the opportunities as they come your way, it's going to feel easeful. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel a resistance when you're stepping into a new paradigm, leaving paradigms where you felt very unworthy to embody certain things. But because you don't need to prove something to yourself, it's going to feel a hell of a lot more easeful, right? And aligning to your path with ease is like, how do I go from seeing things from less of the level of the ego, and I need it to look a certain way, to the level of the soul? Which, coming closer to the eyes of God and seeing from the level of the soul, it's like you can breathe and you're like, I don't understand why, but I can just trust, right? That's allowing space for grace, right? That's opening your field. Like as long as there's resistance and as long as you're wanting to be somewhere that's not now, you're missing the point anyways. By the time you get wherever you think that you need to get, there's going to be somewhere else that you feel like you need to get by the time you get there. And it's like you'll look back and realize how you didn't enjoy any of it, right? And so for me, aligning to the path with ease has been a tenderizing process. Maybe from the outside, it doesn't always look like that, because it's interesting. As I align with my soul's plan with ease, I've become much more bold and outspoken and confident in who I am, right? So again, it's not judging by appearances, but it has felt like a very gentle unfolding for me. In some cases, it's felt very gentle. And there's going to be moments of activations where you have a lot of DNA coming online at once. I feel like a lot of light workers had a lot of DNA come online, especially if you're in my age range, with Saturn returns and planetary stuff. But there were a lot of codes that became very active when a certain thing started happening on the planet globally. A lot of codes became very active for many people, because for many light workers and for many wanderer souls who came to the planet at this time to help ease this process for humanity, this is why we came, or a big part of it. Right. And so, aligning with your path with ease is recognizing exactly where you are, not making it mean anything bad, not rushing to get somewhere else, because you realize too, through yogic philosophy, yogic teachings, I don't think it's talked about very much in law of attraction communities, but we talk a hell of a lot about this is just one lifetime out of thousands. Some would even say that we play all the parts for all the people eventually. Or, it's all infinite. It's all at once. It's just from this level, it feels like time is spanning out, right? But we're going to play all the parts for all the people in all the ways. Do you know how, trying to appreciate and understand infinity from the level of the finite mind is very complex, right? It's very hard. We can't fathom it from this level. But in yogic philosophy, it really takes the pressure off to get it right in this life. And it really does become about, okay, what is the most harmonious way that I can exist in this moment? Sometimes harmony is, eating a fucking tub of BJ's, not that I do this, but, I'm just I don't know why that example came through, but it's releasing ideas, right? Of what a spiritual person looks like, how a spiritual person talks, what, if you're a mom, if one of your temporary roles is to be a mother or a parent, it's releasing your ideas of what that's supposed to be and doing your best to align with your soul stream. What feels truthful to me? And it's going to feel what allows you to feel the most free are generally what is more truthful to you. And sometimes it's not what society has told you. It's not about all the numbers. For some of us, it's about having a cozy, nice little community of people that get it. Because generally, the more that you blow up, the same amount of people that are appreciating you're going to attract many people that are not ready for the type of teachings that you have to offer, the level of depth, right? Their minds can't comprehend it because, again, there's a reason why they say that if you're in the realms of trying to help set people free spiritually, holistically, you're going to be persecuted, right? The second, Joel Goldsmith says this, the second that you start taking on students, you are going to be persecuted. It's fine. Your team has got your back. That's not a negative thing, but you've just adopted a contract with these beings, right? Or to help set each other free. And so you're meeting people in all their complexities at where they're at. And sometimes you're going to have little loose ends coming in to your field, right? In all different ways, not just people, but you'll have these loose ends coming in to really poke at your foundation and see what the fuck is really up. And that's great, right? So as long as my most humble of opinions, not needing it to look a certain way, but just like, what feels freeing? What feels the most free? For me, I'm realizing too, what feels the most free being someone, this is where understanding karma is really important too. Someone that has I made a video about this on my Instagram and TikTok because people are like, why are you responding to people? Like, why do you keep making videos like where my intros are like essentially telling people to fuck off in a really more tactful way? But my energy is like, fuck the fuck off, right? And the reason why I do that is because, if I was too immersed in teachings and ideologies of like what a spiritual person does and what law of attraction is all about, I might be like, oh no, I can't speak my truth. I can't say what what would allow me to feel the most free in this moment. But because I went a big part of my life not speaking my truth, right? That throat chakra thing that I had, it feels so freeing for me to say fuck the fuck off when the fuck I feel like saying fuck off. And to use that language too, and not whatever allows you to feel free in the biggest and smallest of ways. Right? And that requires you to release your ideas of why it's happening, why it needs to happen. And you're just showing up here in each moment. You're being harmonious with what is being called of you in that moment. Just like sometimes certain scenarios, they might look similar on the surface. There's a reason why Gandhi says, my commitment is not to consistency. My commitment is to truth. Because when your truth is being in harmony with the way things are, not how you want them to be, not how you think they should be, not because you're trying to prove a point to someone, not because you're trying to be consistent so other minds can understand you, but to truth. What is this moment calling for me? And so sometimes that's very similar experiences, almost completely the same, right? Appearing in your life. But because you're in tune with the subtleties, the subtle realms, which is what I really love about metaphysics and yogic path is it brings you in more in tune and to be more aware of the vibrational realms, the subtle realms. That's what it means to be mystic. It's where the realm that is closer on the side of the formless is much more real to you than the realm that is of form, right? And so because you're so in tune with that flow and that infinite intelligence, then how you're guided to act in each one of those moments might be completely opposite. But it's okay. You're in harmony. And so that's going to allow things to come through a lot more seamlessly, right? It's going to feel like a natural unfolding. It's going to feel like you're not forcing it. And because you're not forcing it, it's going to come in a lot sooner than you think, right? But as long as we're resisting where we are now, as long as we're waiting for the external confirmation or the external partner or yada, 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 it's like you're tethering yourself to suffering. But it's like, I don't care, or, that's great, more power to you because it's going to bring your power back to you. You only start to put up, that suffering only needs to be there long enough for you to get the fucking point of where spirit's trying to guide you. And I know a lot of the people drawn to my channel, you are here, if you're still watching especially, you are here to be in service more so for humanity than you are to do your own exploring. Doesn't mean it's not going to be fun, right? Because when you're in alignment with your soul's plan, it feels fun. It's written in, right? It's organic. It's your true nature. But, you don't really start to align with that in my most humble of opinions. You really don't start to align with that until you have emptied out enough. until you have really calmed your nervous system, calmed your subtle body, been okay with moments of stillness, really embraced the side of the divine feminine, which is just a human construct, right? It's just like, whatever. That's a different story for a different day. But feminine and masculine, that's just like how mammals interpret these different ends of the spectrum. It's not feminine, it's not masculine, it's just different scopes of the one, right? That are the different scopes of creation. I heard someone say God, breaking down the word God, because a lot of people have a distorted relationship to that word. Generating. Don't quote me. I don't know the O for sure, but it's like generating, operating, and destroying factor of creation, right? And so what I love about yogic principles too, and just aligning to your soul's plan with ease, is it's like empty of yourself, follow what feels the most free, what feels the most relevant, even if that means you're just chilling, whatever. And sometimes that's going to mean like taking a trip to Disneyland with your kids, which I'm, going at the end of the month with Maya and her dad and some of his, relatives. So, it's really just like not making, like enjoying. Is it so hard for us to realize that we can enjoy it and that there's not this like, it's not this huge complex thing that we're making it? That's just where the beauty of the human mind comes in, because now we can have this like witnessing factor and this notion of free will that, depending on who you ask, is or is not there, because it's like, as long as you are creating from the realms of the subconscious and your inner world remains unexplored, it's likely that you're trying to create from the level of the ego anyways, the level of, trying to rewrite your childhood script, or the level of the unconscious and the subconscious. So, you can think that you're trying to create out of free will, but it's still just like perpetuating suffering in your field that you're going to eventually have to meet. Because again, if it has to look a certain way for you to feel okay and to feel like you've made it, you're missing the mark, in my most humble of opinions. There was a point where I was like really exploring this. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to work on, or not even work, I'm just going to focus on like only doing the things that bring me the most amount of joy. For that to be like a notion, a far out notion on this planet, I feel like really just goes to show where humanity is still at, just like, the civilization is still at in terms of like what this life is for and what is really possible. To think that life could just be about joy is so beyond us, right? And again, joy doesn't mean that you don't have these, when I speak of joy and happiness, it's a much more subtle. It's not this big showy like stimulation, right? As long as it's, and that's one of the things too, as long as it's born of the mind, I feel like it's going to lead you to suffering at some point, because there's things attached, there's beliefs attached to things that are born of the mind, versus the yogic path, and where I feel like, again, these can merge, but they tend to diverge, is about focusing on being. It goes from how do I get high to how do I just be? And that's true peace. That's true bliss, right? And so true joy, I've noticed, again, it doesn't matter. I can be sitting at a park, blissed out, having no sense of stimulation, right? That's that mind that wants the dopamine and, the rushes, etc., right? And even to a certain extent, we can be attached to our suffering. We can be attached to our fears. And, the fear of being persecuted, or, having to pay for a sin, going against ourselves at a certain point in our incarnation, right? There's like so much that when you're building your house from this level, I, in my most humble of opinions, feel like you're building it on sand, versus how do I focus on more on my subtle body and clearing obstructions to the divine mind and focusing just on bliss. If it was more about that and being in harmony with the natural purges that are going to come along with that, and your karma unraveling itself, those past propensities and behaviors, etc., that's an easeful process. That's not going to be such a shock to your system, so that when you do pop yourself into a reality before your nervous system is actually ready for it, it's like you're not going to come across distorted and just like awkward and weird. And not that that's a bad thing. That's not a bad thing, but it's just like you could have enjoyed the process. We can enjoy the process. We can focus on just being joyful and not, as much as we can, not making it mean about anything. That's where the yogic path, I feel like, is very different than law of attraction, because I feel like law of attraction is really exercising the realms of the cerebral, where, and again, it can be useful in terms of if you do have something that you have brought into very naturally into your experience that you want to take hold of, that you want to harness, that you want to take advantage of, like an opportunity. Law of attraction principles and teachings can be really great because then it helps you get in the vibrational realm, right? It helps prepare your subtle body for that, right? But it's like, which is coming first? Keeping the horse in front of the carriage of like, I'm just going to do what I can when it's being called of me. And sometimes that it does require me to vibrationally prepare for something. But I've noticed that the more that I focus more on just being in peace in that very subtle realm and not chasing after happiness or running away from fears, the more it's just like you show what it has to reveal to you about where you're still not free, where you're still bound. That's what the yogic path is about. It's about freedom. Right? It's not about being bound. And sometimes I feel like you can see in certain communities, if you're so focused on how it's supposed to look and it making sense all the time, you are bound. You're not free. You're not free. You're not, unless you be like little children. Children, are free. They are not worried about what's going to happen next. And they really just go where they're guided. They go where they're led. Right? So I feel like this feels pretty complete for now. If there was something that I felt like I left out, let's talk about it. Let's explore something else together. But ultimately, you guys know what's right for you, right? And the most essential part of both of these, paths that can seem very divergent at some points and also seem very in alignment is vibrational sovereignty. What is going to set me free? What feels the most free, inclusive of where I'm actually at and not trying to get to the end or trying to, jump 8 paradigms over here when this is just what is actually very organic and authentic to me. You're going to enjoy it and you're going to be able to appreciate not only your humanity more, but you're able to appreciate the humanity in other people even more. And you're able to see how like everyone, it's all perfect. Everything that's happening in everyone's lives in the most complex and subtle of ways is absolutely perfect for what they need to become more free. And the more that you see that within yourself, the more that you recognize it, the more free you become. And it's so joyful. And you're like, oh my God, there's no fucking rush. It's like the weight of the world comes off of you, right? And then, so that's what we want, right? That's where those paths really do diverge. That's where, or merge. And that's when you're going to align with it with more ease. I'm not trying to rush. I'm not trying to prove. I'm perfect exactly how I am, flaws and all, insecurities and all. Right? Social anxieties and all, whatever you're going through. I'm perfect as I am. Because of it, it's just going to unfold. You're going to be like this beautiful unfolding, right? But doing your best and remembering that people outside of you don't have the answer any more than you do, right? Especially when it comes to your life and how you should be navigating it. And if you're still watching, if you're joining my videos, it's essential. You are at a point in your evolution. It's essential you figure out what it means to you. Right now we can have these discussions and sometimes it's great. I still go to teachers when I'm wavering in my own system and when I'm wavering in what I already know to deeply be true. When I'm wavering in that is the extent that I will go to teachers and teachings and recordings that reinforce my backbone and what I know to be true. Otherwise, there's no template for any of this. There's no template. There's no guidebook. It's like, it's between you and your higher self. It's between you and God. So the more that you can meet God in meditation, the better. The more you're going to align to your subtle body, to your soul's plan. And again, it might look completely different than what you thought you wanted 5 years ago when you weren't taking the time to align and create from the inside out, versus still in a subtle way you're creating from the outside in when you don't take time to really penetrate the levels of the subconscious and the unconscious and the subtle body and restoring your nervous system, right? Because again, it's just really subtle ways. It becomes much more subtle the more that you walk this path, but trust yourself above anything else. You can't make a wrong decision. It's all feedback, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's wanted, unwanted, it's all just feedback. And it's all just showing you how much you're still caught in the wheel of samsara. We want whatever, we want to do whatever you want to do might not be what I want to do, but what I want is freedom. I want to be untethered from it. And there's a lot of freedom when you also recognize that I'm going to get caught. We're going to get caught in it. We're going to still get caught in bullshit. Shit that doesn't matter. We're still going to, fall for the, people that aren't, we're still going to have that karmic runoff be there, right? And we're still going to create from distorted places and have distorted tendencies come up. But there's freedom in being okay with that. It's all fucking good. It's all good. There's nothing you guys have to get to. It's all here. It's all now. It's all eternal. It's going to go on forever. This lifetime, whatever. Next lifetime, we'll see what's up, And I'll see you there. Most likely. All right, friends, I'm going to leave this here for now. If this brought peace and contentment and confirmation to your heart, please give this video a thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe if you've been here before, and I hope I see you soon.